Hello, friends of the internet. My name is Austin Belzer, and welcome back to the Austin B Media Podcast. Today, we're diving into A24's Warfare from the divisive writer-director Alex Garland, who co-directs the film with former Navy SEAL Ray Mendoza. Warfare tells the story of a platoon of American Navy SEALs on a surveillance mission gone wrong in insurgent territory, presented in real time based on the memories of those who lived it. And my guest today is none other than Pedro Lima. Pedro is a film critic from Goiânia, Brazil. Did I pronounce that right?
Ah, that's good. That's good pronunciation.
Uh, Focusing on documentaries, international films, shorts, and restoration. He also is a member of the International Documentary Association, International Cinephile Society, and part of one of my critic groups I'm in, the International Film Society Critics Association. I just remembered this before we hit record, that we talked about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning 2 years ago. For those who watching and listening and maybe don't want to wait for my podcast on the Final Reckoning with Ben Miller, go check that out too. We had a pretty, I think it was a 2.5 hour conversation, something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty long. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty long, and this was going to be pretty long too. Pedro, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's been a while, almost almost 2 years. So yeah, sorry for taking so long, but yeah, it's good to be here to talk about film as
Oh, no
always.
worries. It's kind of how it works. I was talking a couple weeks ago with Matthew Simpson about Andor season two, and we realized that it seems like every May we talk. I have him on the podcast to talk about something.
Yeah, but it
Because
makes
I think,
sense because every May a lot of stuff are coming out and big titles is the beginning of the North American summer. So yeah, it makes sense.
yeah, and we actually already have a podcast episode planned for 2026. The original plan was going to be, by the way, go listen to that podcast, Avengers Doomsday, but that moved to December of that next year.
It's a
So
Christmas
yeah,
now.
it's Christmas. So instead, I think we're going to be talking about Mandalorian and Grogu instead, which may or may not be good. We'll see. Based on that leaked trailer, I don't know about it, if it'll be good. It's giving me Clone Wars vibes and not the good Clone Wars. But anyway, before we get kind of started into warfare, do you have anything you'd like to recommend?
Just a minute. Sorry I had to answer someone. Lately, I'm between too fast. I was watching a couple of some Cannes films, some Cannes screeners that I got. I watched some pretty good stuff. There are some reviews on movies we talked about. They're about Caravan, A Poet, I Only Rest in the Storm, some good films that I watched. And I'm preparing to Tribeca, so also going to be plenty of reviews. So in this meantime, I'm watching a couple of old stuff on Criterion channel. We are talking on May 28th, 2025, and today Criterion announced the Wes Anderson box set that is like an
It's
archival 4K box set
hmm
on 10 of his films, and it makes sense if you don't know, like the producer of his films is the owner of Criterion now.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's the owner of American Paintbrush, which produces the Wes Anderson films and a lot of other films, and they bought the Criterion. I think it was last year. But
yeah.
yeah,
Last year,
Criterion is the best one in terms of content. You have a lot of commented material. You have great critic essays and also like very good restorations. I'm really into restorations lately, and you have like plenty of good stuff there. So you asked for a recommendation. So I'm going to recommend a film that I watched on Monday. It's called Little Murders, directed by Alan Arkin, the actor, Alan Arkin. He directed this film in 1971. It's a new Hollywood film. It's a dark comedy, and yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it is a product of its time, but it's like really interesting how those actors would make these weird films, and it's a very good uh restoration too. So yeah, I'm catching a couple of classic films, and I want to watch a couple more before diving into the pile of screeners that I have to watch for Trebek.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen that. Little Murders, is that on
Little
Criterion?
Murder by Aaron Arkin, yeah, it's on Criterion
Okay.
Channel. And oh, another one that I watched lately was I traveled for an industry event on this weekend, and on the way back home, I watched Four Nights of a Dreamer by Robert Bresson, the French director, which is also a 4K restoration. It's a new copy, but this one is on Mubi. Mubi also has a couple great copies, and they just bought a new 4K restoration of Amores Perros by Alejandro González Iñárritu. Like they are acquiring a lot of restorations. They released the Fall last year, which is a 4K restoration too. The Sacrifice. They are releasing these new 4K copies, and yeah, I'm just glad that there are these streamers. They are niche streamers, but there is a place for restorations to be watched, and it's important to like restore, conserve, and talk about these films that sometimes are like classics, but sometimes are unknown films that deserve to be like discovered. So yeah, it's pretty neat to dive into that.
I'll have to check those out. I haven't seen either of those. And yeah, I'll have to check those out. I'm not subscribed to either, but I'm sure I can pick them up on rental or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Or maybe I'll just do like a 1 month thing. I don't know. But you know, if I had to give a recommendation, let's see what's coming out this week. Karate Kid, and I think that's it, right? Karate Kid. That's all that's coming out this week.
Yeah, it's also coming out Definition Scheme in a couple markets. The new Wes
Okay.
Anderson. It's out in Brazil, Definition Scheme tomorrow, but it's not
Okay.
playing. It's playing in my city, but it's playing only one theater, and it's pretty far. So I'm not sure if I can if I can make it. But yes, Definition Scheme, which go wild next year in White, and Karate Kid Legends, which is already playing in Brazil like 2 weeks ago. So it's playing for a while.
Then I guess I would probably recommend The French Dispatch or Isle of Dogs, which were I think Isle of Dogs was my first Wes Anderson movie. Yeah, and there's a very distinct reason why, because um I kept mistaking Wes Anderson for W.S. Anderson, and I hate W.S. Anderson movies. So I'd get the two um
Yeah.
and so I just like, I don't want to watch a Wes Anderson movie. Those Resident Evil movies suck so bad. No, so it wasn't until 2018 I saw a Wes Anderson movie, and I went into the Alamo to go see that. I might watch it again, because I really like that. That's one of the Wes Anderson movies I own, actually.
Isle of Dog is pretty good, but I like the Fantastic Mr. Fox from his animations,
I
which
need to
is
see that. I need to see
yeah, you're
that.
going to love it. It's a very, very good one. And I watched recently Bottle Rocket, which is his first like feature. And it's pretty interesting to see like in perspective, like how he was and how he is now. And yeah, it's also a good film.
Yeah, and if you're on Criterion Collection, I'm gonna give a third one, because you just made me think of this. Check out Christopher Nolan's first short film. I believe it's called Follow It.
Yeah, it's a I think it's a 60 minutes film.
So then maybe I'm thinking of like Flyby. Let me
Let me
look this
check.
up. Otherwise we have to turn in our uh critic badge. Do.
Yeah, Follow Me is 69 minutes.
Okay, so then what am I thinking of?
Are you thinking of Buttlebug,
Yeah,
which is
it-
3 minutes?
yes, that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I'm thinking of. Just to make sure, short. Yeah, Doodlebug. Yeah. And I think that's streaming on either Mubi or Criterion.
Yeah, I think it's either one of those. Following is on movie. I just checked.
Okay, cool. Um, because a few years ago when I did I think it was a podcast review. I can't remember. I was talking with somebody about Tenet, and we did this whole like series uh, of videos or podcasts about Christopher Nolan movies, and I think I watched his entire filmography, minus a few, I think, because I think a few of them weren't on stream or even available to rent, even if you bought them, or not available for purchase, is what I meant. But yeah, so I checked out like Doodlebug, Following. I highly recommend either of those if you get the chance, because I do think watching somebody's directorial debut um, is kind of an interesting thing because Doodlebug is very, I don't know, David Lynchian in ways.
Yeah.
It's very much like a acid trip. Whereas I mean, I guess Christopher Nolan movies are kind of an acid trip, but they're more tame.
I think it's a very formal acid trip. It's not as like
Yeah, it's
wild
wearing the
and
business suit in the
yeah, it's
bathroom.
very like it's very British. But you mentioned David Lynch. I just want to give a shout out because I just got the press release. Twin Peaks, the first and second seasons, and The Return on
Hmm.
their stream. I watched this year and it's like a masterpiece. I don't watch much, but Twin Peaks is like masterpiece TV, it's top tier TV. And the first and the third seasons are like perfect. The second one has like a bit of problems, but it has a lot of fillers episodes, I think. The first and the third are like top tier TV, and I think it's a good moment to watch Twin Peaks. David Lynch left us this year, and a lot of his stuff is becoming more and more accessible through streamings and cinemas. A lot of cinemas around the world are showing his stuff on the big screen. So if you can watch on big screen, on the small screen, on movie, a lot of his stuff are pretty accessible and very high quality. So I recommend watching those. Yeah.
Did Mubi say if they were remastering or doing anything to those seasons?
Um, I'm not sure because I think they when they released The Return, which was 2017, they remastered for
Okay.
for like the release. I remember like the box sets, and I think it was like a remastered version of season one, season two. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's a new remaster. The return is like pretty recent, it's 2017, but they are like getting the whole Twin Peaks stuff. So the films, Fire Walk with Me, The Missing Pieces. So like they are all there now. They will be there on June the 13th. It's a good opportunity to catch. Twin Peaks is only like it's less than 40 episodes, so it's pretty good. And if you like melodrama and acid trips, and you enjoy it, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah, it's classic.
Yeah,
It's classic TV. Yeah.
yeah, as fun as a murder mystery can get.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about it's not a whodunit. It's a acid trip subversion of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
With our recommendations out of the way, we've got quite a few. So take some time to watch those. I fully put on my stamp of approval on all of them. Although I will say I did look at that Wes Anderson box set. Not enough pastels. It looked a little dull to me.
It's pretty. I think it's pretty plain and pretty. I know it's supposed to be an archival box, but yeah, it's pretty colorless. I don't know. I
Yeah, it's like
think it like
dark beige and green.
yeah, I think it lacks where's the Grand Budapest Hotel Pink and the French Dispatch green, bluish green. Where are the colors? But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a, yeah, it's 10 of his films in 4K. So yeah, if you have money to give yourself a treat, recommended. Criterion, Also, Criterion has plenty of sales throughout the years, like 50% off, 6% off. So yeah, yeah, I know what they do in November
Hmm.
around the Black Friday, the Barnes and Nobles sales, and it's pretty good prices. So yeah, if you collect, it's a good opportunity. Criterion has like plenty of good stuff.
Yeah, with that, I think it's time to get into our discussion of warfare. Oh, Pedro, I'd love to hear your initial thoughts or expectations when you first heard about warfare.
It's it's interesting because I watched Warfare last week. I didn't watch on cinemas
Mm.
or before because I had too much watch, and like I was covering like three festivals in a row, and then I watched it. But the expectations were good because I watched last year Civil War on theater. It was a pretty good experience. Like the sound design is very good on Civil War. Civil War has Wagner Moura, which is a Brazilian actor, and like we loved it. We loved him. And I really liked Civil War. And so yeah, I was thinking about a more psychological uh study of the Iraq War on here, and yeah, it was not what I was expecting. And yeah, it can explain why I wasn't really into warfare. But yeah, the initial thoughts were this.
Yeah, so um, I think my initial thoughts were, please don't screw this up, because I've watched a lot of war movies. I've watched Brothers, I've watched Jarhead, the more recent stuff, and I know kind of what those war movies are like. They're very intense, but they're also very, very fictionalized. So I was hoping, you've got an actual veteran on the crew, co-director actually, Ray Mendoza. I was hoping that kind of keeps Alex Garland's kind of um, fantasies in check, because I think while Civil War was a great movie, and while consistently has pretty great movies, he can kind of get lost in the weeds in the third act, I think. Yeah, that was my expectations, and I did see it in the theater um, with I, I can't remember if it was Dolby. I think it was Dolby 7.1 surround sound was what the Atmos, or not, was what the Alamo had, the Alamo Draft House, where I saw it at. In fact, actually, I saw this in a three movie marathon, actually.
Yeah, I remember.
I saw King of Kings, Warfare, and
And the
Ballad of
Ballad of
Wallace,
Wallace,
yeah,
yeah,
in that order. And I was just like, dang, that is such a varied thing to
yeah, it's
do.
very
And
different.
oh man, I almost didn't. Anyways, I was trying not to sneeze on mic. But, anyways, yeah, that's just my basic impressions of like, okay, I don't want him to mess it up, and I don't want it to get fanciful. I just want it to be by the numbers. And I think that's kind of what the biggest impression I had walking away from out of the theater was this is very visceral, this movie. Especially with the sound design. And maybe I'll get into that. But there's explosions that go off that literally made me jump out of my seat. I was like, oh, like the sound design is so rewarding, because um, you'll hear bullets whiz by, like literally by your ear. It's fascinating. So I think that was the big um, impression I had walking out of the theater.
Yeah, I think the sound design is like pretty good, and yeah, I don't know if the same team from Civil War, I should check, but yeah, I think Alex Garland is killing with his sound team. It's like pretty good professionals. They are like very good designers, and yeah, it's amazing work in both of those films.
Same guy, Glenn Fremantle.
Yeah, he's very good.
Yeah, but so that's our impression. But obviously, as I've alluded to, Alex Garland has a very distinct style based on those films, Garland's previous film. What um, themes and approaches did you anticipate uh, Warfare having?
Yeah, I think Warfare is maybe his most conventional film in a sense. So it's a straight up war film about Iraq. It does not have like the psychological study or the like the subversion that he brings through Ex Machina or Man or Civil War. Pretty like straightforward war film. Yeah, you may find the audience for that are like plenty of people that like to watch war films because of the tension, because of the action, but also like the dramatic aspect of it. And I think that if you expect uh, this same kind of subversion that he brings on those films, I haven't watched Annihilation yet, but if you expect this style, you won't find it here. It's a pretty like different vibe. It's pretty different. Like I feel that this is like Raymond Mendoza film. I don't feel that is like Alex Garland. I feel this is Raymond Mendoza. It's him
Mm.
telling his story, and Alex Garland is like the luxury professor that helped him and signed with it. And yeah, it's uh, I'll develop why I have some problems with film, but yeah, it's pretty different from his like past works.
Uh, I would agree with you that this is Alex Mendoza's film, or not Alex Mendoza's, Ryan
Raymond,
Mendoza's. I mixed the two names there because it is so reserved. Because I think the trepidation I had going into Warfare was what I said before is like Alex Garland gets very, very fantastical. He makes everything kind of the whole film a metaphor. Whereas Ray Mendoza in this is just like, here's what happened, no fluff, nothing. I mean, there's probably not a wasted moment, I think, in this movie. I mean, there are slow moments in this movie, but it's on purpose. There's no like big alien coming. It's just people shooting at each other and trying to survive. It's very simplistic in that way. So yeah, I agree with you on that. And I also agree with you that maybe Alex Garland is maybe um um Alex Garland is maybe A24's insurance that to get people in theaters. To be like, oh hey, watch this movie because we have Alex Garland's name in the trailer. When really, I think again, it is Ray Mendoza's film.
totally. Yeah, completely agree.
And then speaking of Ray Mendoza's, how do you think his perspective shaped the film compared to most of the other war films we see today, like American Sniper and all that?
I think the difference if you compare, yeah, it's I think it's comparable to like American Sniper. The difference is American Sniper uh is the telling of a story about a problematic man by one of the most talented and most regarded American directors ever. That is Clint Eastwood. He knows how to film it. And American Sniper is pretty different from other Clint films because it is not a film that criticizes the United States as much as the other works and criticize the American society. And the difference to Warfare is that it is pretty much Raymond Mendoza's version and vision of what happened in that house in that night and how they got to the house and how they got off the house and how they saved those guys' lives. And so it's a pretty it's a film focused on like the result of the war in the like the scale of because I think when we see war films, it is much on the big scale, on the major actions and battlefields and World War II films are that are like plenty of people exploding. You think of Saving Private Ryan first like 40 minutes and that are people's guts out and people dying and people getting shot and explosions and heads off. But it is pretty big in scale. And Raymond also tells his story with a street, two houses, a tank. So it's a smaller scale, and it's very much the personification of his experience and the character of the Pharaoh, which the Pharaoh is portraying Mendoza here. So I think it's Mendoza trying to tell and kind of exercise what he feels that happened on the day. So yeah, the Pharaoh want a tie is portrays Ray Mendoza. I just researched the whole name because I didn't know his last name.
Yeah, and I think it is a very straightforward movie. It's the I think the first 30 minutes you are just waiting in a house. Um, with the exception of the opening scene, of course, uh, which A24 has memed to death, um, with the opening dance scene. But other than that, that first 30 minutes is fairly just we are in a house, we are looking for possible attack points of attack, and to the point where you almost get as bored as the characters. You're like, okay, come on, let's get to something. And then when it happens, you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah, it
It,
happens
it,
pretty fast.
yeah. So I think it was Ray Mendoza brings like a lot of personification, I think, that I don't think a lot of war films I've seen personally do a good job of. I mean, I know Brothers did a really good job, and Jarhead, stuff like that, does a really good job. But in all reality, it either turns up that notch to where the characters become unbelievable in those movies, like to where it becomes almost campy, and but here it feels very real because well it's based on a real story or what is the opening text say, like based on a true memory or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so because of that it's an imperfect memory. You see things where it's like I don't know if this matches up because this just happened but I'm seeing this instead. But yeah, it's a and to go into the cast, you've got DeFaro, Wunatai, Joseph Quinn, Kit Connor, Cosmo Jarvis, Will Poulter, Noah Centineo. I think that's how you say his name, Centineo.
Yeah.
So let's talk about them really quick. What did you think of the cast, and what they bring to the movie?
Yeah, that's one of my problems with film because I remember when the casting was getting announced and all these actors, these young actors that are like hyped, were in the film, were cast in the film. So you have like the Pharaoh, which just came off Emmy nomination for Reservoir Dogs. We have Will Poulter, which was in The Bear, Cosmo Jarvis, which was in Shogun, Kid O'Connor for Heartstopper, Finn Bennett, Taylor John Smith, Michael Gandolfini, which is a pretty good actor, Adrian Bradley. So yeah, you have Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton, Aaron McKenzie. So you have like a pretty uh popular cast, and I think that that they don't have much to work with except for the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh has a lot to work because he is the director, he is the personification of Ray and his infractured memory, his incomplete memory. And yeah, I don't, I just remember that all these hype guys were in the film when the credits like rolled up because I couldn't see much except for Michael Gandolfini because I think Michael Gandolfini gives a good performance in this. I think he and DeFaro are the best. Michael Gandolfini is he's the guy that is helping the others out with the medical necessities, so I think he has a bit more to work with.
No, he's the tech guy. Gandolfini's
Yeah,
the tech guy.
he's the guy who gives the morphine to the injured.
Okay, I think so. It's
He's
been a
the
while since I've seen it.
Yeah, he's the one that is like doing the tourniquet, the more thin. He's the one like treating the woods.
Huh.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's him.
Okay. Yeah. Granted, we're working on my own memory too because it's been
Yeah,
almost 2 months since I've seen this, so we're dealing with
yeah.
my imperfect memory too. Now that you say all these names, the ones I didn't list in the Google Doc, I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty stacked cast. And I think, you listing off those projects, and I'm like, yeah, I could see how that could be uh, a negative for a lot of people because I'm sure people coming off of Daredevil Born Again are like, oh, hey, Michael Gandolfini's in this. Do the mobster thing. Um, or Joseph Quinn. Hey, I'm gonna see him
Fantastic
pretty
Four
soon in Fantastic Four. Yeah, and he was in Stranger Things last year, or 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago.
years ago. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But it's a stacked cast, and I could see why you'd be concerned about that. That melted away for me in the first 30 minutes, because it became less about like who, oh, this is a really stacked cast, and more like, oh, these people are just inhabiting the character. Joseph Quinn, he was maybe the only one where I'm like, I don't believe you're a soldier, in
yeah,
this thing
yeah.
because
I don't think it's good.
because
Yeah,
even throughout the whole movie, I'm like, this guy would be chewed up and spit out if he was a Navy SEAL. I mean, yeah, I don't know anybody who is a Navy SEAL, but I do know Marine some people in who are in the service. Yeah, he would not survive. Um, his well, let's just say his physique would not survive more than a week.
yeah,
But but that's a small thing for me. But yeah, but it did detract a little bit when we get to the end of the movie where we're supposed to believe like all these things about, and it's just like, I don't know, I don't believe any of that. Now, do I believe Michael Gandolfini is believable as a soldier either? No. But that's a topic I could get into for 30 minutes. But but yeah, I think that's my only detractor. Maybe in an otherwise great movie. Let's see. I think we can. Do you want to skip any of these?
No, I think
We can
we
go
can
down the
continue.
list.
We can continue the.
Okay. I just didn't want to like, yeah. Anyways, so bouncing off of that, we're obviously kind of getting into our criticisms of the movie. Like, what do you think? Um, what are your the aspects of Warfare that didn't quite land for you?
I think you said that you were sold on the first 30 minutes. I couldn't like I think if you don't buy the proposition in the first 30 minutes, you may not like buy the rest of it. And like I couldn't care much for like the story and the because I think there are like plenty of characters there are plenty of people and while it works on a technical level, it's pretty cinematic, like experience the sound, the cinematography, and the like the orange to brown color grading. It creates an ambience to the to that time and period, but I couldn't like engage with the characters and everything that were there. So it was like a distant connection for me, and yeah, I couldn't like care about what was happening there and etc.
So I'm gonna go opposite because I really did connect with this a bunch. I think this is probably one of my favorite films of 2025.
Okay.
The only criticism is I think for a film that says it's based on a memory, on the memory of those who lived it, it's a bit too perfect at point. Where I'm like, this is an event from 19 years ago. Things have happened in between there. Eyewitness testimony is inherently unreliable, right? And I wish it created more doubt in the viewer about what was real and what wasn't. That's my only real criticism against it because if you gonna like have that tagline on the poster, fulfill it. Like, make me doubt what your version of the narrative. And maybe that's not what he's going for. Uh, in that case, I'd say to the A24 marketing department, pick a different tagline because every time I saw the trailer in theaters, every time I saw the poster in theaters, it would be like based on a true memory or something like that. And it's just like, okay, well, that's cool, but it doesn't cause enough disbelief in the viewer's mind, I don't think. So that's my one qualm with. Um, Now getting to your, I think you mentioned something about technical stuff. What did you
Mhm.
think of the technical elements, like the direction, the cinematography, the sound, the music? What did you think of all of that?
Yeah, I can't remember the score at all. I
Yeah,
didn't like
you're right about that. It
it,
doesn't
it
really have a
didn't.
score
Yeah,
that
I don't think any
go ahead.
of Alex Garland's films is stood out for the for the score, at least for me. Like I can't remember who's the composer on like Civil War or
Relation stood out. I know
yeah,
that.
I haven't watched that yet. I'll watch it after trip, I think.
Yeah.
The other aspects, I think, the same sound guy from Civil War does a pretty good job. Very good to like create ambience and to put you and the like and the action that are explosions and that are like plenty of gunshots, directions. And the sound design like confuses you with where the bullets are coming from, and it's very, very, very good. Yeah, Civil War is composed by Jeff Barrell. He hasn't done much. Ben Salisbury, and they haven't done much. But speaking of the directing, I think it's these lacks a bit more of visual imagination to like create the dramatic aspect. I think the geography of the scenes are a bit confusing at times. Sometimes you're thinking you are in space, but you're not. And it's not like a psychological trick to confuse you. It's more like a lack of continuity and better like decoupage. I don't know. So yeah, I think it is. It has some solid moments and some uh visual fascinating ones, but I think the one that stood out for me is the sound. The sound is a very like it may end up on my sound sound list for awards and then
Same. I think I mentioned I saw it in surround sound, so all the bullets just whiz past your ears and stare. I think it was in surround sound. I'd have to look, but I would actually love to hear this in Dolby Atmos. I would have loved to hear that because if that's what it can do in surround sound, where I'm like flinching like the
Mhm.
characters do when the bullet come out of the dark, like I would love to hear a Dolby Atmos mix of this. Maybe I'll re-rent it and see if there's a Dolby Atmos mix on the home release. But um, but yeah, I mean the sound design is impeccable. I don't think it's an achievement in and of itself to get me to flinch at something on screen that I can't hear, that I can't see, but I can hear. Like I don't think people realize how hard that is to do because in a horror movie, I don't jump when the jump scares happen. I just kind of like, oh, I knew that was coming. Oh, well, okay. So that's an achievement in and of itself, and it will end up on my sound awards, assuming that something else doesn't usurp its place. But I don't think um, unless something somehow figures out a way to create that same reaction in my body, which maybe there is something this year like that. I don't know. But and like you said earlier, the color grading, immaculate. I actually have forgotten about the shit. Orange to blue to green. It's very intense and something actually that I noticed as well in Sinners, which I just talked about with Elise Chaffins.
Yeah.
It does a similar thing there, and I loved it too. I'm a sucker for technical stuff. Is kind of the takeaway everyone should have from this. If you Even if you have a bad story, you can save it for me if you have a good technical. aspect. Like if you've got great color grading, if you've got great sound design, it can save something for me. But with that said, I don't think we really have a lot left to say that isn't spoiler territory.
I think we can jump
So
into it.
so what rating would you give Warfare out of five?
I think I gave it 1.5 on Letterboxd.
Brutal.
I couldn't connect, and
I think I
it
gave it a
made some,
five.
yeah, but maybe if I was in the theater, I watched at home. If I watched a theater, I think it could have been a different experience. But yeah, I couldn't like connect, and yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't connect with it.
I'm sorry to hear that. I wish you could have. But sounds like maybe I don't know. What would be the ideal version of this for you then? Like that would make you connect.
Yeah, I may watch on in a home theater as a rewatch. I think it could. I have access to a good projector and a good Yamaha, so I can. It's not Atmos, but it's a good Dolby 5.1, so I can rewatch a couple years from now.
Awesome. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts after doing that. Um, because I almost think it's entirely dependent on your sound system, certain points of this
Yeah,
movie.
I watched on headphones, but yeah, I don't
Hmm.
know.
So yeah, I think that's a good place to transition to our spoiler-filled discussion of Warfare. So this is your official warning for anyone listening or watching who hasn't finished the movie yet and wants to remain spoiler-free. Just pause here and come back after you've seen it all. So consider yourselves warned. Okay, I'm gonna take a quick break, really quick
Okay,
before we move on. I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break.
okay.
Okay, be right back. All right, I'm back. Okay, so let's talk about the narrative itself. What were the most impactful parts of the plot for you and why?
I think when it happens, the gun shooting and the explosion when the guy is, I think it's the most impactful uh, action scene in the film. It's probably the only one. I think it only has this one that is like a direct combat, and you have then like the tank coming to rescue them. But yeah, it's a pretty impactful. You see like body parts flying, and it's a pretty impactful.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of right. There is only one real action scene in this movie. It's 30 minutes of setup, and then the other side. I don't know if they say what they who they're affiliated with. I don't know if they say if they're Al Qaeda or what group they're with, but they attack, and then it's pretty much that the entire movie is
Yeah,
the entire rest of the movie.
I think it's Al-Qaeda. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't want to get it wrong, you know. But yeah, I think for my half of it, I think obviously, as I've talked about in the non-spoiler thing, I think that the 30 minutes of just sitting there is the most impactful plot scene for me. Because it shows a side of war I think people don't see a lot is the waiting, surveilling. And I think that's what stood out to me the most on it. Is just the waiting and I there is stuff that kind of leans towards conventional war film, like the explosions of body parts and this one guy, the repeated joke of this one guy just repeatedly knocking this guy's leg again and again and again, whose leg has been blown up by like an IED or something. This one staff sergeant, I think, just keeps hitting it time and time again. I think that's the only other highlight. Which makes it sound like I don't like the movie, but I really do.
Yeah.
Because it's just that sustained paranoia throughout the entire movie. Yeah. So. that's really what stood out to me for the narrative itself. Since we've talked about it a lot, what are your thoughts on the way the movie opens?
Oh, the dance scene. Yeah, it's a fun introductory scene to demonstrate that these guys they're- they are like the at the end they are men, they are like the hormones and the etc. They are like they miss home and they miss their their partners. I know it's an interesting introduction. I can't find a good way to describe and but yeah, it's a fun gag before the like the tragedy and the bloodbath.
Yeah, and I think my thoughts on it are it is the most A24 way to open a movie.
Yeah,
To be
probably.
like, here, let's make some jokes really quick and then go into the actual thing. Because I notice a lot of A24 movies open like this, where it's like, here's the calm before the storm, and here's the storm.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
so, but I don't think it's entirely bad. I think it was just like a thing where I'm like, okay, I'm sure it's something Ray Mendoza put in there, but it's just like, okay, I'm not a big fan of that opening, especially with big surround sound. So you're like getting a migraine with the bass bumping because it was loud in that theater. It was like,
Yeah, imagine
and
the song playing and yeah,
like it was
must be
shaking
pretty.
the seats. I was like, okay, I don't want to get a migraine today. This is my second movie out of three. I really don't want to go into Ballad of Wallace Island with a headache. But turns
Yeah.
out that didn't matter. But because it's not a great movie. But um. So getting to, I think, what is the big difference in this movie? How did you feel about Warfare's portrayal of warfare?
Yeah, I think it is a different portrayal of it's a different facade of war. As I said in the non spoilers part, mostly war films are focused on major events and major gunshots and gunfires and explosions, but helicopters falling down. But this one is on a specific event that affected Mendoza, and in this aspect is pretty interesting in the sense. But yeah, I think it's a nice cut of intricate well is a war.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think you actually just made me remember something that kind of went over my head in the movie. So let me ask you about this really quick. They keep saying a phrase over and over again. I forget what it was. Like they kept using very specific terms. Let me see if I can find it. Um, I can't find it, but they were talking about like they're using very obvious military lingo, and I'm just sitting there like, what you're talking about, like show of force stuff like that. And I wish I had remembered what the phrase was because it's bugging me.
Yeah, I can't
But
remember either.
where they're like talking about who the lead. I wish I remembered, but I won't go down that spiral. But did any of that bother you at all?
No, no, I don't. This kind of things doesn't bother me. Like usually, the military lingo don't like really. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, okay. I just thought I'd ask because I'm like, that was one thing where I'm like, okay, maybe, before we get into the movie, have like a brief text explainer for the terms in the movie or give me like a dictionary so I can flip through it and be like, okay, what is he saying? Because there were certain parts where I'm like, you're speaking another language to me. And I get that's part of the authenticity, but that's one part of the authenticity where I'm thinking, okay, this is a bit hard to, and maybe that's something that would be rewarded on like seeing the subtitles, because there are moments I think where it's hard to understand what the characters are saying just normal because of the sound design. But I mean, it's pretty rivaling Christopher Nolan and Dark Knight Rises sometimes. But yeah, I think that's kind of my thoughts on how it depicts war. I think it's pretty accurate, almost to a fault in that way. In fact, I might ask some service members about it and see what they think.
Yeah.
I know you said earlier this isn't a very psychological movie, but I would like to talk a little bit about that, like the psychological toll the events of this movie takes on its characters. Did you think it offered any nuance to their portrayals?
Yeah, I think it lacks this nuance to most of those characters because it does not have like much development as I said earlier. But I think the Ray character and the Michael Gandolfini ones, he has nuance of how the soldiers react to those. Uh, the Flora is in a situation that he tries to calm down his companions that are like to die in the war. They lost their legs and they are bleeding and they are saying, "Oh, I'm going to die. I'm going to die," and they have to calm down and do the operations, the processes. So I think it brings a nuance of, in a sense of this technicalities that movies doesn't often shows. You don't watch most of people doing a fornicate uh on a person leg and cutting it off to stop the bleeding. And yeah, it is an interesting, a fascinating moment in the film. It is limited to those two characters that I mentioned, but it is kind of fascinating to watch it.
Yeah, I think Joseph Quinn gets a pretty, I think, nuanced portrayal of PTSD. Um, he has a moment where I think I forget how it happens in the movie, but basically I think it's right after the IED explosion. He walks back in, uh, and his hearing, um, it, and he's just not listening to anybody. He just goes and sits in that one room with the people that actually own the house that they what is the military term for taking over a house? Whatever that is, you know, took over their house to do overwatch uh, of Al Qaeda on. She goes and sits in that bedroom, just like not even having any emotion whatsoever, just kind of just sitting there and staring off into the distance. And I think maybe more could be done in that moment where it's not just the 1,000 yard stare. It's maybe a little bit more, um, but I think what they do with it, you know, it works well enough. It gets the point across without beating you over the head with it. So, but yeah, I think it's pretty nuanced. I wish it went a little deeper, but I understand why in a 90-minute movie. I
Yeah.
think it was 90 minutes. Maybe it was 2 hours. I don't know. But anyways, short movie. You really can't go into the effects of PTSD without, you know, being 2.5 hours or more. For that, I would recommend something more like Brothers or Jarhead, because this is very much more about the actual events themselves, not the fallout. The thing at the end credits that kind of tells you what everyone's up to there. But I guess speaking of that, what did you think of the ending? Everyone getting home scot-free. Well, relatively.
Yeah, they what I think it what left me more of an impression is like the after the credits when the real soldiers, one of them, the one that lost his leg, goes back goes to the set and talks to the guys. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's pretty impactful. You see that they really, those people existed, those people are there, and they do a comparison with the guy and the actor, and it's pretty.
Mhm.
I think it's pretty interesting that most of them chose not to show their faces. Their faces are blurred.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So,
it's I think it's pretty weird. I was thinking to myself, why these guys are don't want to like get connected to this film. Is there a deeper reason? I don't know. It seems like it's sneaky. I don't know. It's kind of it's kind of odd to say the least. Yeah.
well, you know what I interpreted that as is that they might still be
Probably.
somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd be active duty 20 years later, uh, but
I
stranger
thought
things
most
have
of them
happened.
were retired, but yeah, it could be. It is a possibility for sure.
But yeah, I think the ending is a bit too neat for me, but I do like that they connect, the actual location where it actually happened. Because I do think there is a reality in which somebody watches this movie and thinks, "Oh, this is all green screen. This is, shot on a studio stage somewhere." But to see at the end credits one of the veterans coming back to the place where they were actually filming it, it was a nice kind of assurance that hey, we invested the time, we invested the money to really be to at least create a recreation. I don't know if it was at the actual like
Yeah, it's a
location looking.
recreation,
Yeah.
but it
Um,
is a very well done art directing and etc.
yeah, because I mean, volume, I it would be very easy to just have all the exterior be volume stuff.
Not
Um,
all of the directors know how to use it well, but yeah, it's easier.
Not even the ones that invented it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But
I think I can think only of two. I don't watch much TV. I can only think of two like good uses of it. That is the Batman
mm,
and Steven Spielberg with the Fablemans. He
I
uses the
forgot he
volume
used. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
when there's the hurricane. He uses the volume.
Huh.
So yeah, it's the two good uses I can think of the volume.
Yeah. Don't watch
I
The
know they
Mandalorian.
use in the Mandalorian. Yeah, I know they use
Yeah,
them. It
it gets
was
really
like,
bad.
yeah, it was the Mandalorian that originated and etc. But I know that in the season three, it's not good.
Yeah, you can very much tell. Like at Percy, they did it with Percy Jackson and the Olympian season one, and I'm like, this looks horrible. You could just tell that they're on a green screen or all in the
Yeah.
volume. Let's see. Getting more into the more over. How do you think the message of the film resonates 20 years later, and what conversations do you hope audiences have after seeing the movie?
Yeah, I think this is pretty complicated because when you're outside of the USA, you see differently
Mhm.
because a war film, especially about the is basically a propaganda to like defend and to resonate about the conflict. It is a conflict, everyone knows that it is a conflict that it was for the petrol, for the oil, but it has all like the justification of the 99. And it has a very geopolitical, it is a conflict that it is very specific on the geopolitical situation of the era. It is a very like it is a product of its time. And films about it, they usually focus more on the patriotic sense and the justification of the acts because a lot of bad stuff happened of the United States like attacking terrorists using terror. You have this. I think films like this, even though I didn't like it, I think it's important to generate conversations about films about war, and it is a conflict that it is still like very near us. It is 20 years only, so we can talk about how we portray war and how we document it. Because it's not a documentary, it's a representation, but you have to like it is a good discussion about the violence and how you portray it. So I think it generated conversations, and I really appreciate that even though I don't like it or I don't support what they do in the end, that is kind of it's kind of an agreeing in some form of thanking the soldiers for its services, and of course, thanks for the service. But also, like, these guys didn't want to show their faces for a reason. There is some unethical actions and choices. So I think it is a film that sparked, at least I read lots of conversations and discussions online, and I think that's pretty important. I think it's pretty important to converse about that, especially in the times that we're living. There are wars, there are conflicts happening, and it may reflect on how we document and criticize as film critics and as writers about these materials. This
Yeah, I think that's elegantly put. I think looking back on it, I think it's more of a warning than anything. Is I think the film's message is like, hey, yeah, you're kind of in a way celebrating what these people did 19 years ago in this movie at the end of the movie. And I think it gets off pretty easy by the end where it's not really willing to own up to anything. Um, I mean, it hints at it several times in the movie, I think, where it's like, hey, maybe we're not supposed to do this, or maybe we're supposed to do this, but it really doesn't dig deep into that, which I wasn't a big fan of not digging into it, but I hope typical. Did you like it? Because I don't think this is a movie you can necessarily enjoy so much as experience. I just hope when people see this movie, the conversations they're having is like, do you A, agree with these people's actions in this movie? And B, what research are you gonna do to kind of look at what happened during this period of time? Because I think there are pretty good documentaries out there that exists. I think National Geographic put out one that was specifically focused on the U.S.'s exit from Iraq. I think it's called Retrograde or something like that.
Yeah, Retrograde is about the US leaving Afghanistan.
Yeah, and I think
It's a
that that
movie
would be
kind of a
one
documentary.
thing
Yeah.
highly recommended. It's on Disney Plus or Hulu. I'd highly recommend watching that at the very least. But I'd very much appreciate people looking at their own research. You know, there are other conflicts that happened around this time too that you might want to read. Because 20 years before this, there was Operation Desert Storm, and that's even worse than this. Um, it just wasn't as highly publicized, I think. Um, but yeah, I would I just want people to have the conversation, which I think is kind of what this movie's trying to do. So I I hope that's what people are talking about when they're walking out of the movie, not, oh, that was a really good A24 film, or oh, that was a really good war film. I hope they're actually digging deeper than that. I hope. But those are my hopes. That's not necessarily exactly what happened. But oh goodness, I think that about wraps up our discussion of warfare.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've talked about everything we've really everything I've wanted to talk about. So, Pedro, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk about warfare with me. And no, not the concept, the movie.
Yeah,
Although
thank
we
you so
are
much
kind
for
of
having
talking
me.
about the concept. But for the people at home, where can they find your work?
Yeah, you can find me on, I think Letterboxd is the best place to find me. You can find me at Pedro Lima. It has linked all the places that I'll be right for Short Stick, Keep Love Movies, Contra Zoom, Movies to Text About. There's also my Twitter there. You can find me there, or X. Yeah, Twitter X. Yeah. So yeah, you can find me there, and you also see what I'm watching, the festival films that I'm watching, the Criterion stuff that I'm watching. So yeah, it has a lot.
Yeah, follow his Tribeca stuff because as I shared last week, or I guess by the time this goes up, 2 weeks, um, I'm not going to be covering Tribeca this year because their remote access isn't as great as it once was. So I'll leave that reasoning linked in the description. But yeah, go check out Pedro's Can and Tribeca uh, coverage. I'll have that link. But if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a rating, do all the things on your favorite podcast app. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the movie in the comments below. I think Spotify has comments now, which is crazy.
Yeah.
You can usually find me on Blue Sky at austinb.media, my Discord, or the Patreon community chat. And speaking of Patreon, if you'd like early access to the next episode and more, head on over to patreon.com/austinmedia. For just $3 a month, you get 48-hour early access to my reviews, podcasts like this one, interviews, exclusive Patreon posts, monthly editorial calendar, research, letterbox lists for research purposes for my major reviews. And then at the $10 tier, you get access to unedited versions of these podcasts, monthly behind the curtain posts, exclusive podcast episodes. Like by the time this comes out, I'll probably have The Last of Us season two. I'll probably record that on my own, put that up on Patreon, as well as access to a monthly film club. From now until May 31st to celebrate Patreon's iOS app update that allows them to circumvent the uh, Apple's 30% fee. I'm offering 30% off your first month or year of your membership. And I think you can do that either by putting in the code Apple at checkout, or I think you can just hit join um, or upgrade, and I think it'll automatically apply. Let me know if that's not the case on my social media. But that's until May 31st. That discounted price, 30% off first month or year of your membership. But I have been your host, Austin Belzer, and until next time.